Welcome, everybody, to Tammy Tuesday, the podcast of life, love, and purpose. Very happy you're here with us today. I am ecstatic about my guest. She is a true soul sister and someone who I absolutely adore and cherish. She is the positive energy of light that just exudes everywhere, and I'm happy that she's here. Please welcome Camilla Dorand. Thank you for being here.
Oh, Tammy, thank you for having me. I've been following your path since you started Tammy Tuesday, and it's an honor and privilege to be here talking to you. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, it's my pleasure. And I'm happy that you're here too. And I always told you, it's funny, when you and I met, I love how we met actually, because you were one of those people that we met at one of the magazine events. I think it might have been the last conference that I went to for the business.
It was.
And you were pretty new to the business.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we were, of course, put together at a dinner, which was no accident. And we proceeded to have the best time just talking and chatting. And I was like, okay, there's something going on with this chick. And so later I was like, I need to talk to you. There's like stuff going on and I can feel your energy. And then of course we connected later after the conference and talked, and I got to know so much more about you. And I saw you on another podcast, and that's what intrigued me, because I didn't know all this other side of you, because you obviously were doing the magazine business. You've done all kinds of things in your life, but your spiritual walk was fascinating to me. So anyway, we've stayed connected, and I just, like I said, I cherish you as a dear friend, and you are truly a light. So thanks for sharing your story. And I want, basically what I'm hoping to do today is for you to shed some light on your story, because you've been through some challenges and some things in your life that you've asked for, and you're like, careful what you wish for, right?
Yeah. You're going to make me cry.
Well, it's true though. You've been through a lot, and that's why your story is so beautiful. And I want it to be shared, because people that listen to this, my whole purpose and journey with this podcast specifically is for people to speak their truth and talk about why they are where they're at today. I'm getting goosebumps looking at you. Why they are where they're at today, and what things took place in their life to get them there. And you're one of those people. You just published a second book, which was another thing that I was like, oh my gosh, we got to talk about that.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually republishing a book that I published in 2015. And now I realize why I'm doing this is because I realize now that I wasn't ready to own my story. I wasn't ready to, shout out my message and shine my light like you said. So I could start from there, but I want to be mindful that this is your podcast and let you ask questions.
Well, let me start with this, because what I heard, the story that of course intrigued me, and I was like, oh my gosh, we need to connect. You shared a story about you're a cancer survivor. You have had challenges just in your family life. Just your whole walk has been what's kind of got you where you are today. So maybe start with just some of that history. You don't need to dive super deep into it, but talk about that, because you specifically asked for a sign and you got more than I think you were gambled for. Yeah. So maybe start there, a little bit of your background there.
Okay. So I never really had a good relationship with my mom, right? For many reasons. It was very toxic. She was my anti-hero. And she died in 2008. And I didn't feel anything when she died. I was actually relieved that my mom had died. And I was the one that had to give my brothers the message that she had died, because one was living in Canada and the other one was living in Australia.
Where were you at this time? Because you're from Brazil.
Yeah, I was living in São Paulo in Brazil with my dog. And my parents' housekeeper, she called me like it was 10 o'clock in the morning. I was starting a meeting. And she was like crying. She's like, Camilla, your mom died. I'm like, what? She's like, your mom died. I'm like, I dropped everything and I ran home. to their house, like their condo, because we lived very close to one another. I lived like 3 minutes walking from them, and I was at a store close by. It was like a 15-minute walk. So I ran to my parents' condo. And in my mind, all I could say was, go in peace. Finally, go in peace. Like, you're free.
Mm.
That's all I could think about. And when I got there, she was really dead.
Mm.
And I didn't feel anything. My dad was working. He just arrived. We called the EMTs. And the next day we have like in Brazil, the death process, the grieving is different than here in the States. So when people die and you're Catholic, there's a mourning period of hours, like with the open coffin, right? So you mourn the dead for a few hours. So in her mourning, there were like over 200 people there,
Wow.
right? And they were all like friends of my dad's, my friends. And my mom, unfortunately, didn't have a lot of friends anymore. But it was like, I was impressed with how many people showed up to support my dad and I. And we had tried to talk to my brothers, but no luck. So the next day, I spoke to Gus, my younger brother, was living in Australia, and he was super sad. But when I spoke to my middle brother, his name is Tadeo, and he lives in Australia. He growled, this very painful growl that I had never heard in my life. I was like, "Ah!" And I'm like, dude, chill out. Like, it happened, right? And he was devastated. He was devastated. And I'm like, okay. Hung up. Then we had the burial the next day. And that was it. I went on with my life, right? This was back in 2008. And then in 2010, so 2 years after she died, I was in the States, here in the States, with my dad in California to celebrate my dad's whatever birthday he was going through, 60 something, 7 years old, in Disneyland. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, you have those fireworks and all those Christmas carols going on. Right. So we were there and we were just watching the fireworks go, come from behind the castle, and all these Christmas carols being played. And all of a sudden, Silent Night came on. And Silent Night came on. The memory of my mom smiling and singing just came alive in my mind.
Mm.
And that was one of the few times that I remember her smiling and full of life, because Christmas was always a very sad time for me because my mom was either drunk or on pills, right? So she was never really present. So I didn't really like Christmas. But when this song came up, I just started bawling. And I couldn't stop thinking about her. And my dad was like, just, what's going on? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
So when the song ended, I said, I can't stop thinking about mom. And I was just crying. I'm like, why am I feeling this? Like, why didn't I feel anything when she died? Why is this coming up now? I had all these questions, and my poor dad, all he knew was like to give me a hug, and,
Right.
He didn't know what to say.
Mm-hmm.
We went back to the hotel, and in the middle of the night, I started to have this dream. And it was such a weird dream, and it involved a cat. So growing up, we had cats. So while I lived with my parents, there was a point we had like 6 or 7 cats. My mom loved those cats.
Okay.
And after I moved out, I got a dog. My cat was still living with my mom. So cats were like her life, right? They became her babies.
Mm-hmm.
So in this dream, I was up like on a tower, like a condo tower. And sorry, I gotta mute this thing. Keeps dinging. I was in my condo. I was looking down on the street, and my mom would feed this cat every day. The cat would be waiting for her, and my mom would feed the cat with a little like round tin full of food. And I would just watch this cat being fed by my mom. And one day my mom didn't show up, and the cat kept waiting for her.
Mm.
And that's when I realized, I'm like, oh my God, my mom died. This cat, this poor cat will never see my mom again. Who will feed this cat, right? And I woke up and I felt this pain inside my gut, like a black hole had opened up inside of me.
Mm.
And this pain that I had never felt before, I'm like, oh, this is what my brother felt.
Oh.
So I looked at the bed next to mine. My dad was sleeping. I'm like, I can't wake him up right now. And I'm not even going to mention this to him, I thought. And I went back to sleep. The next, a few hours later, we wake up and we're going down to breakfast. And I'm super sad. I'm trying to hold all those emotions in and in the story and the dream. And I'm like, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything. And then my dad's like, oh, I had a dream that I had a white Mercedes. And I'm like, I dreamt about Mom.
Oh.
And I just started to bawl again. And we went down to the breakfast and I couldn't stop crying. And I said, oh my God, why was this so difficult? Like, I started questioning the relationship and my reaction, my behavior. And my dad's like, Camilla, you didn't feel anything. Now you're at the other end of the spectrum. You're feeling everything.
Right.
Like, you come back to the middle. I'm like, okay. So after breakfast, I calmed down. And after breakfast, we went to get our luggage. We got into the car to drive to, so we were making our way to Texas. Because that's where our flight to Brazil was going to leave from. And my dad's like, I'm so tired. Can you drive for me? I'm like, sure, Dad, no problem. So as I got behind the wheel, he fell asleep right away. And as I was driving out of town, I felt my mom in the car.
Mm.
Like, I could smell her. I could feel her presence so strongly.
Yeah.
Her skin, it's hard to describe. She was there with me. And we just kept driving. I didn't say anything to my dad. He woke up, but I'm like, I know my mom is here. She's with me. And I had no idea that was the beginning of a process.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So after that experience, I would constantly have dreams, and they weren't dreams, they were encounters with her.
Yeah.
And in encounters, she would be dressed in white with a cigarette in her hand. And instead of her eyes, there would be like two X's, right? One X in each eye. And she would like have like this really straight ghost-like hair and super pale. So I had several encounters with her like that. And it was like so disturbing.
Right.
Like, what, like, what do I have to learn here? What do I have to go through? So, and I kept having these, and I would share with my dad, and you would just listen. There was nothing to say, right? But all of a sudden, my mom would start to heal in my dream, in these encounters. Like, she started to look healthier. More full of life, and her hair was like more shiny and healthy. She was dressed like a regular person instead of being like in a white sheet floating around. And in 2011, so a year after this experience, I was finishing a coaching certification in Brazil. And we were supposed to, there was an activity where you're supposed to choose two people to represent you and the person that you're asking for forgiveness. Okay. Right. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't have anybody to ask for forgiveness. Like, I don't do anything wrong. Like, who am I going to ask for forgiveness? Who has to forgive me? And I waited until everybody went, and I'm like, Camilla, you're such a dummy. It's yourself. So I chose two peers, two ladies that were there. One represented me, and the other one represented me.
Wow, it's powerful.
Yeah. And so I told this lady, I think Marcia was her name. I said, "Oh, I have to forgive myself, ask forgiveness for myself, and this is why." And the other person didn't even know who she was going to be or what she was going to say. So when Marcia started to ask for forgiveness, like embody me in the exercise, like the whole class started bawling.
Oh, wow.
It was so powerful, Tammy. And the girl who was supposed to be me, not like in the now or at the moment, the like in the current moment, whatever it was, she was like, "Camilla, I forgive you. Like, it's okay. You were doing your best." And she was just going on and on. Like, I just started crying and seeing myself being represented by these two women.
That's so interesting because you're literally observing this. You're the observer in what's happening with the forgiveness about yourself.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. And neither of them knew my story. Neither of them knew about the relationship with my mom.
Right.
At least not in depth. I had to disclose a little bit to the one that was asking for forgiveness, but very superficially.
Right.
But I think God went into their heads or their hearts in that moment to really, because it was like I was really talking to myself. Like those are the words that I would use, the way that I would talk if I were to forgive someone. Like it was me.
Yeah.
And that day, I called my dad and I said, "Hey, I haven't visited mom's grave since she was buried. It's been 3 years. Like, can you take me there? I don't even know where it is." And he said, "Okay, sure. How about next week?" I'm like, "Okay." So the week after this experience, my dad took me to the cemetery. And when I saw my mom's name engraved on the tomb, oh my God, I kneeled down and I just started to cry and ask for forgiveness and saying that I forgave her.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like, and it was so freeing, so freeing. And my dad just like stood like several feet aside and he just let me do my thing, go through my process. And when I was done, we got up and we left. So this was in October of 2011. And it's funny that after that, I had a great dream with my mom, a great encounter with my mom, and she was happy, she was healthy. Like I felt great. It didn't feel weird to have a dream with her anymore. And I was traveling so much that year for work because I used to be on TV doing co-hosting makeover shows. So that year they sent me all over the country to shoot this program. So come end of the year, I'm like, I'm not traveling for New Year's because in Brazil, New Year's is a huge celebration. Everybody wears white, everybody leaves the city, goes to the beach or to like nature, and they make their wishes, they set their intentions. It's like leaving the old to welcome the new. It's this huge thing. And I decided that I was going to stay home with my dog because I was tired of traveling. I hadn't given my dog enough attention that year.
Right.
So I called up a friend. His name is Felix. I said, "Hey, Felix, do you want to come over for New Year's?" He's like, "Oh, I don't know." I said, "It's just going to be me and Elcinho. So why don't you bring a bottle of Dom Perignon and I'll have some cheese and wine." He's like, "All right." And in Brazil, we have a tradition. So as we're setting our intention for the new year, we're supposed to choose a color of underwear to wear to solidify that intention, right?
Wow.
So if I want to manifest money, I'm going to wear yellow underwear.
Okay.
If I'm going to manifest passion, I'm going to wear red underwear. If it's love, it's pink. And if it's white, it's peace, right? That's a Brazilian tradition.
I love it.
So I'm like, what color underwear am I going to wear?
I love this.
And I'm suddenly like, I'm not wearing any underwear. I want God to give me whatever it is that I need for the next year.
You're not going to direct it.
No, because I live my life saying no plans, no control. So why would this be different? And so it was 11:59. I told my friend, I said, Felix, I'm going to go take my panties off.
It's probably like, oh, okay.
And don't be like, don't think I'm weird, but this is why I'm doing it. And explain to him. He's like, okay, I'm going to take my underwear off too. So he took his underwear and we're going to do the same thing.
Oh,
So
I love it.
at like 15 seconds to midnight, I just stood in front of the window in my condo. I lived on the 9th floor. It was like these old buildings. So it's like a huge window. And I looked at the sky and I said, God, I know I'm so close to feeling fulfilled. I'm so close to knowing what true happiness is. Please give me whatever lesson it is that I need to go through, whatever process I need to go through to be able to achieve that level of happiness and fulfillment. I'm ready. Send it to me. Like, give it to me. I can smell my happiness, my fulfillment. I'm ready. Whatever it is, give it to me. And that was it. Midnight came, January 1st came, great. We toasted, Dom Perignon, we drank, we ate some more, we danced. And then Felix left. And it was about 3:00 in the afternoon the next day. He's like, hey, I'm coming by. I'm like, all right. So he came by. And I didn't understand why he was coming by. He had just been at my house like the day before, right?
Right.
Oh, and I forgot to mention this. Felix is a medium.
Ah, okay. Well, that's a huge point that you did forget to mention.
Felix is a medium. Felix is a medium. So when we were in my living room, I was like sitting on my couch in the way that was my legs were on my couch, and Felix was sitting on the armrest. And as we were talking, I felt my mom show up. Mm. And Felix said, do you know who's here with you? I'm like, yeah, she's here with me. And he said, well, she's here for you to tell her what else you need to tell her that you didn't get to say yet. And at that moment, I talked to her. I thanked her for everything that she had done. Again, that we were good. I was very grateful for her and that she could go in peace now. She didn't have to keep coming back. Like, our relationship had been mended. And I never saw my mom again after that night.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Until recently, right? So I'm having these dreams, but now they are not encounters. They're dreams where we are a big, happy family. My 2 brothers, my parents and I, like, we're just happy. And these are just dreams because my dad and my brothers are, they're alive and they're fine. So I know they're just dreams, but my memory, my subconscious, the relationship I have with her now is very good. She's actually very supportive. So anyway, going back to what I asked for, right?
Yeah.
So after I did this ask to God, I went to a new doctor, a new gynecologist, and he said, Camilla, I want you to get checked. It's your annual. And I'm going to include here a thyroid ultrasound. I'm like, all right, I've never done one of these. All right. I was 37 years old. Yeah, I was 37. 36? 36 years old. Yeah. I was 36. Or 30, I don't remember, it doesn't matter. So I got my thyroid ultrasound, and when I got my follow-up appointment with him, he looked concerned. And I'm like, okay, what's that face? He's like, oh, nothing, but I want you to see a head and neck specialist because you have a tumor in your thyroid. And it looks kind of funky. Right then and there, I'm like, okay, I have cancer. I made an appointment with this guy. It was a 3-week wait. I went to see him. He felt like my neck. He's like, yeah, you need a biopsy. And I left his office. I was crying. He had no tact. I was crying. I scheduled my biopsy. There was another several weeks to wait. And my dad went with me to get the biopsy. So they poked me with that huge needle. And then a few weeks later, the diagnosis was going to be available. And it's funny that on the weekend before I got my diagnosis, I went on this retreat with a monk. And it was like a yoga retreat. And I went by myself. There were other people there. I shared a room with this lady. But I had forgotten about the diagnosis or the test. Like, I was there, we were talked about contentment and gratitude, and looking back is like, oh, God was preparing me to get my formal diagnosis. Right. And so on Monday, I went to the lab to get my diagnosis. So in Brazil, things work very differently from here. You have access to your labs. You don't have to go through the doctor to get your exams or like the results, right? You have direct access. So I got my exam, and then I put it in my car. And when I sat down and I read, I'm like, oh, carcinoma. I called Felix because he's a doctor. I said, what is this? He's like, oh, it's cancer. You have cancer. I'm like, oh, great. I kind of knew. It's. I asked for it, right?
Yeah.
So I drove to my dad's office. He wasn't there, so I waited for him he was getting back from a meeting, and I waited for him downstairs at the lobby. And I had my results in my hand. As he was walking up to the lobby, I said, Dad, I have cancer. He's like, no, it's not possible. Let's go upstairs. We're going to talk in my office. So I sit in front of him and I give him the results, and he's reading. He's like, no, Camilla, this can mean so many things. I'm like, Dad, it cannot mean anything else. I have cancer.
Was he just in denial?
Yes, he was in denial. He had lived a lot of years of his life in denial, right? Mm-hmm. That was just one more denial. So after I spoke to him, I said, I need to go home. And I went home. I said, I need to be with my dog. And I just laid on my bed. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to have a conversation with God. And I said, listen, if you want me to die right now because of this, if this is, I'm supposed to leave this earth, that's fine. I've traveled the world. I've reinvented myself. I've lost a lot of weight, like 90 pounds. I've forgiven my mom. I've donated my eggs. I've changed careers. Like, I'm good to die. Like, I've lived an exciting life so far. Mm-hmm. However, if you want me to stay, I want you to make me an instrument of your will and put me in front of people that I can truly help transform so they can live their fullest potential. And that's it. Then I scheduled my surgery. It was in the middle of June, and they took out my thyroid. And the doctor said, Camilla, you're going to have to be in bed rest or do nothing for 10 days. And I'm like, really? 10 days? Come on. I'm super active. I exercise 6 times a week. I walk my dog twice a day. He's like, no, you can't even walk your dog. I'm like, what am I going to do? He's like, not my problem. So after I came home from the surgery, I had a very good friend of mine, stay with me overnight. I didn't have the strength to shower. Like, I was feeling super weak. And funny enough, at peace. It's funny. I was feeling at peace. Like, oh, I just went through a transformative experience. And in no moment, I felt like I was a victim, Tammy.
Yeah. You were empowered. Yeah. You were totally empowered.
Yeah. It was a gift. So after Erica came to stay with me that night, she left and I was left to my own devices. My dad, he was married at the time with his second wife. He would bring me food every day. And I'm like, okay, but what am I going to do for 10 days? I still have 3 more days to go. And that's when I'm like, oh my God, my book. It's time to write my book.
Yes.
So I sat down and I just like flowed 6 pages, just came out of me like, blah.
Wow.
And I finished the book in 3 months.
Wow.
3 months. And it was in Portuguese. And I started looking for publishers because of who I was there, of all the media exposure and stuff. I'm like, all right, I can get a publisher and get this done because I already had two big books published over there under my new persona. And then I went through a treatment, which I took radioactive iodine, and I had to be like isolated in the hospital. So there was a deterrent, whatever the English word is. So I had to interrupt my plans for a little bit. But I found this publisher and I sent her my book and we were talking. And all of a sudden I had a wedding to come to in Alabama, in Birmingham. And I didn't have any money left because for three months, it's so funny. When I had the cancer, the news for the cancer, the surgery and the treatment, it all took 3 months. My professional career world stopped. I got no phone calls, no emails from either clients, prospects, or TV producers.
Wow. And that was clearly unusual.
That was so unusual. So that was God saying, no, you need this time to write your book.
Wow. So he basically put everything on pause for you.
On pause.
So you could do this.
On pause. Yes. So in November of that year, I said, Dad, should I even go to this wedding? Like, I don't have any money. How am I going to pay for the plane ticket? Because my dad had just lent me money to pay for my car that like I was run over by a bicycle and I didn't have money to fix my car. So he gave me money to pay for my car. And then a few weeks later, I'm like, Dad, how am I going to go to this wedding? I don't think I can go. And he's like, Camilla, you have to go. This is your American family. It's part of your story. It's part of your history. If you need money, I can lend it to you. I'm like, nah, I'll be okay. You're right. I have to go to this wedding. And sure enough, like in a period of 10 days, I got 3 new clients who fully paid for all the services that I provided. So all of a sudden I had all this money, right? So I bought my ticket. I came to the wedding. And that's when I met my husband.
I remember this story.
Yeah.
Well, it's also interesting how you met your husband because you met him years prior to that.
No, I had not.
Well, I thought
I had lived with his family.
Okay, that was
years before.
Well, that's the piece, but that's fascinating because there's no accident as to how you guys intersected.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you were an exchange student with his family, and that's why you went home.
In 1991, yes.
And that's why you went home. And then, of course, you go back for the wedding, and there he is.
21 years later, yeah. And so we met on a Thursday, and then on Saturday, we had already decided that we were going to live together.
Bam.
Yeah, we stole the thunder from the bride and the groom. And so after that, after we decided to live together, I went back to Brazil. I started selling my things. He went to Brazil a month later to meet my dad. He brought my dog with him to the States. And I came 2 weeks after that. And we've been together since the day we met. So it's been almost 11 and a half years.
Wow.
Very long time. And so coming to the States, I was like, all right, I needed some time to adjust, to adapt to the new culture.
How long were you here when you were an exchange student with the family?
A year back in 91. Yeah. Okay. A year back in 91. And I hadn't talked to them so I left in 91, went back to Brazil, finished high school, came back in 93 just to spend the holidays and see everybody again. But after I went back to Brazil in 93, I cut all ties with the family and I only reached out to them again in 2009 on Facebook.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was like many years to catch up with the story and stuff. Right. And so when I moved here in February of 2013, we were living in Newport Beach, and I didn't know what I was going to do, what I was going to work with. And I didn't really have, like, I didn't want to work or do anything. I wanted to adjust and adapt and settle
Wait,
into
back up for a
life.
second, because you went through
Okay.
a whole lot of stuff and you specifically asked for guidance and use me as your will, by the way. So
Yeah.
you're now stepping into a whole new existence of how you feel about life.
Yeah.
So you met Everett and you're starting this life and you came back to the States. So your whole perspective has completely shifted at this point.
The thing is, I had no perspective. It's not that I didn't have perspective. Things were happening so fast that I didn't realize that things were changing.
Right. You were just stepping into it.
Yes, I was just stepping into it. And only now recently, Tammy, is that everything has been making sense.
Talk about that. Why recently?
Because, so I published my book in 2015, and my friends and family, they bought the book and it resonated. They're like, oh my God, this is fabulous. The feedback was wonderful, but I didn't have money to market at the time. And I was like in the middle of my master's in mental health counseling. And I kind of put the book on the side, right? I got to focus on becoming a mental health counselor. And I did. So when I finished my course, I was interning at this agency here in Vegas. When one of my clients asked me, like, Camilla, how did you become a therapist? Like, I'm like
I
said, I made a deal with God, and I remembered that deal 5 years after the fact.
So you hadn't even you weren't even realizing what was going on. It just was happening. And all of a sudden there you are, somebody asked you and you're like, come to think of it, it's because I asked you. I asked for guidance.
Yes.
And here I am.
Exactly. So
wow.
I was like, great, I'm fulfilling my path. This is my purpose. I'm here on this earth to help people. So I passed the board. I completed my hours as an intern. I became a fully licensed clinical professional counselor. I became a certified hypnotherapist. And I started my PhD. I'm like, yeah, I'm doing this. I'm helping people. Yay, 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 right? But then in September of 21, I burned out.
Yeah.
I felt depressed and I burned out. And then the magazine came up for sale. Christine's magazine came up for sale. And something inside of me said, buy the magazine. I want to buy the magazine. And Everett looks at me. My brother was here too. And I had a few friends at home for dinner. It was a Friday night. They're like, you want to buy a magazine? I'm like, yeah, I want to buy a magazine. They're like, but Camilla, you just started your PhD and you have your practice. I'm like, I don't care. I want to buy this magazine. So I bought the magazine, and in a very short period of time, I became a very successful publisher.
Yes,
and
for
that's
sure.
why I won that award.
Yes.
That you mentioned at the beginning, right? But I want to make a little pause here. So after publishing my book, I would tell a few people, like in secret, I published a book. Oh, you did? What is it called? Back to Me. Changing How I Feel About My Mother, My Body, Man. Oh, I'm going to buy it. I'm like, oh, Jesus. Okay, buy it. So they would buy the book and they'd say, Camilla, this is great. I'm like,
you really were struggling with this.
I was really struggling. And they were giving great feedback that it resonated. That's a great story that I should tell other people. And I was at parties and they would tell their friends in public. I'm like, shut up.
Oh my God.
So it was so weird, Tammy. It was so weird.
It's so funny because that isn't you.
That isn't me. Exact. Thank you. It isn't me.
That's not you. The you I know is like screaming from the rooftops, singing crazy in your car, laughing, and you're like, oh, no, don't tell anybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, wow.
And I didn't understand my reaction. I didn't understand, but I felt embarrassed.
Why do you think that was?
This is where everything starts falling into place right now. So when I stepped on that stage to receive that award, I'm like, why am I getting this? I don't deserve this.
The award for the magazine?
Hmm?
Yeah, at the event. Okay.
I don't deserve this. Why are they giving me this award? I didn't do anything. No, I don't want this award. And I felt so overwhelmed when I stepped up. Erica handed me the microphone. I didn't know what to say. And I felt like crying. I'm like, I don't deserve this. And I stepped off that stage and I was in shock for a whole hour until the end of that event. I was in shock.
Mm.
And my life just started to spiral downwards. I felt very disconnected from myself. My life was black and white.
Mm.
I stopped feeling things. I became numb. So the magazine just like stopped there, like plateaued. And I'm like, what's going on? Oh my God, I have to reconnect to God. I have to reconnect to myself. So I started setting an intention during my meditations and started searching for authors and podcasts and this and that. And like books started coming my way. So I got this book, The Game of Life and How to Play It, that was written in 1925. And like momentarily, I would connect to myself and then it would go away.
Mm.
And then I ran into Gabby Bernstein and I read her books and I started listening to her podcasts and meditate. And I would get this burst of self-confidence, self-love, and joy again. And I would dim. Like I couldn't get that connection. I couldn't get that connection.
Couldn't stay there.
I couldn't stay there. Couldn't stay there. So in September of last year, the same conference, I ran into another publisher and she says, Camilla, I met this wonderful mindset coach. I'm like, I want her number. Out of the blue, I was like, I want her number. She gave me her number. I called her as soon as we got back from conference. And I started a coaching process with her. And Tammy, all the junk that I had no idea that I was carrying had been triggered when I stepped on that stage.
Isn't it fascinating that one pivotal moment can change everything if you allow it to?
Mm-hmm.
That's huge.
Yeah, it's huge. So so from October till middle of March, I've been uncovering all these core filters. She calls them core filters because she said the belief is just a symptom, right? You have to go to the egg, like the spider, not
where
the
it
web.
where it stems from. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm not worthy.
Right.
I am unloved.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pathetic. Like I'm helpless. So many core filters, so many lenses that I had been carrying throughout my life were just being released and released and released.
Wow.
And the last filter that I released was I am unloved. And I realized how that was affecting my marriage to my husband.
Mm.
How because of that, I was keeping him at arm's length without even knowing.
Right. Wow.
And all of these core filters were not allowing me to own my story. To shout out from the rooftop that, yeah, I wrote a book. I wrote a memoir. It's my story. I've lived through a lot of things that women can resonate with, can relate with, right?
I'm covered in goosebumps.
Yeah. So now looking back, it all makes sense why I was whispering, why I was embarrassed, why. So I had to go through this process of owning who I am, of loving myself again, of not being ashamed or embarrassed of anything that I've lived through, to be able to then reach out to others and help them. Again, that promise that I made to God.
Right. All those years ago.
Yes. But now it's like exponential, like 10 times more. Like I feel so powerful. I feel so like I own this.
Yeah.
It's mine, you know?
You're really in it.
I am.
Well,
I am.
and it's so amazing to me that for so many people, one moment in time in your life can trigger a complete unraveling of things
That
that
you have no
you didn't
idea,
even know
right?
were there.
Right.
That's the thing that's so powerful for people to understand, is that those things are going to continue to happen. It's how are you going to respond to it? What are you going to do with it? Because you felt yourself, this isn't me, this isn't me. And you knew, okay, I've got to figure this out. And that branch that was given to you of mindset coach, you're like, that's it. I need help. I need to figure this out. And now you've peeled back all these blocks that you've had that were keeping you from what you wanted to do all this time.
I am what I am meant to do, Tammy.
Yes, because that's what your calling is.
Exactly. And you know what's funny? So the day before, a few days before I uncovered my latest core belief, core filter, I woke up, or did I go to, no, I was in bed ready to go to sleep, or I woke up, I don't remember. I think I woke up to meditate, because I meditate every time. Like the first thing I do is I meditate, right? So I sat on my bed and I felt this dark figure inside of me pulling me back.
Mm.
And I'm like, uh-oh, this is a core filter that I need to discuss with my coach. I physically felt being pulled back, like, you're not going anywhere.
Wow.
You're staying right here. And I texted her right away. I'm like, oh my God, something just happened. I need to talk to you. So we were meant to meet on Friday, didn't happen. Then, so we met on Saturday. I was at an event, so I went to my car and we had the session in my car. And when, like, I couldn't figure it out, I'm like, this is what's happening. She's there, where is it in your body? And we started to talk about it. And it wasn't until like I kind of got distracted that I identified what the core filter was. And when I released, my whole body started to tingle.
Wow.
And my brain, it felt like it was being massaged. And that lasted for a couple of minutes, like the release of this energy and this fear of myself.
Yeah.
This fear of saying the right thing because I am unloved. And why did I think I was unloved? Because when I was 5 years old, my father went to live in Nigeria for work. And I thought, he must not love me if he's leaving me. And I had been carrying that for almost 50 years.
Again, there are pivotal moments in our lives, usually stemming from young childhood.
Usually it's generally, yes, you're right.
They block us from our best potential.
Yeah.
And they're not real. They're not even real. They don't even really exist. We give them meaning. They don't deserve meaning.
There are stories that we tell ourselves.
Right. Unworthiness is so common. People feel so unworthy.
Yeah. And like, what did my father do? He left to go to work in another country to support his family. The fact that I wasn't loved was all me.
Right. I know, but it's a normal human response.
Yeah.
The way you responded. Most people do respond that way. And those are the things that when we have more self-awareness and we do get quiet and go within and have our connection and alignment, it becomes more obvious to be able to pinpoint those things out so you can release them and realize that's not serving me. That actually isn't me at all. That has nothing to do with me.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about the thing that I love about who you are. And this is true, Camilla. It's funny because you were saying that you got that award. That was before you and I got to know each other at all. That was actually, I think, the night before we had that dinner.
Yeah, it was.
And I saw you across the table and I could feel you across the table. And that's when I pulled you aside. I got interrupted because somebody pulled me aside and I couldn't continue my conversation with you later on. But that's why I reached out later, because I knew we had to talk. But even still in that, it was still there. You were pulling it back, even though you were still shining.
Yeah.
That's what's so amazing, is we don't even realize how bright we really are. We see it within ourselves. And when we see it that way in ourselves, we believe it. We think that's it. And it's not.
Yeah.
We're so much brighter than that.
We are. And what's so funny is when I went to an event a few weeks ago, and I ran into a friend. I serve on the board for NABO here in Southern Nevada. And I was talking to my president, and I told her about my new project. So I said, oh yeah, I'm starting a new platform for women. It's called Rise, Empower, Dream. I'm having these websites. I'm going to start a podcast and blah, blah, blah. I'm republishing my book. She's like, Camilla, I always had the impression that you were holding back on yourself, that you were dimming your light, like you were making yourself small. And she's not the first one to tell me that, Tammy.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible what people see.
That's what I'm saying.
We don't see it until we see it, right?
Exactly. Well, that's my whole point, is we have no idea just how big we are. And other people see it in us, and we are the ones that are blinded to it. Yeah. I mean, it just blows my mind. All of us are guilty of it. You're not human if you're not guilty of that, because all of us do it. Every single person does it. And when you can overcome that, and like you said, really dive back in and get realigned with yourself and love yourself and have your connection with God, universe, whatever you want to call the word, people call it different things. It's so powerful. And all of a sudden you're like, there I am. Oh my gosh, I have goosebumps. I have this light, and I need to flip it back on because I need it and the world needs it.
Right.
It's so powerful.
It is.
I mean, seriously, it's like it's everything. It's our connection to each other.
It is. And imagine what the world would be like if we all allowed ourselves to shine brightly.
That's peace and love and joy, period. Yeah. I mean, that's it. I feel so strongly about this, and that's so much of why I started this whole platform, is because self-love is where it all starts. I mean, you have got to see how beautiful you are and how bright you are, and really love and appreciate yourself so you can shine your light on everybody else. And it inspires people to find their light.
Right, exactly.
I mean, that's it. It's so huge in this world. And I'm grateful, so beyond grateful, that I have such wonderful people in my life that I can share and connect with and be inspired by. That's what this is all about. I say this here a lot. The reason I'm doing this is for myself. This makes me happy. Like these conversations, it's great. If it's inspiring and helps others, that's awesome. But I know it's helping me. And that's where it starts. This is for me. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fabulous. I do.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. I just feel grateful.
But that just goes back to like the psychology behind it. When you give yourself love, so you're doing this for you, automatically you're giving others love. You're doing it for others.
Well, that's what's so ironic, is the second you pour into yourself, I say this all the time, you pour so much into yourself that you can't help but overflow onto everyone else.
Exactly.
That's just what happens naturally.
Yeah.
So it's so true. I'm so excited that you're starting this platform and stepping into your beauty and your power, because you are such a light, Camilla. I just find you so inspiring, and you are truly in your space, on your path, doing these things. And I'm your biggest cheerleader. I love it. I love it.
I love you. Thank you.
I love you too. I love you too. So with your book, this is is this a relaunch of your book, or is this a new book?
Yeah.
Explain that a little bit more.
So the first draft was in Portuguese, and I wasn't ready to finish my book. So it only, like, my book ends with me coming to the US to live with my husband. And I had another name. So I first published it. It was called Written in the Stars,
Right.
The Art of Letting Go and Starting Over. And then I was in Sedona visiting a friend with my dad, and he's a marketing expert. And I said, Larry, would you read my book? He's like, sure. Tell me what you think about it. He's like, okay. So he read it, and he's like, Camilla, this could be the next Eat, Pray, and Love. I'm like, really?
Oh.
He's like, it could be better. I'm like, okay. He said, but you need to find an editor to go through the text, because there are some words here that are not flowing well because of English
because of translation.
Right. Are not flowing well. So you need to find an English professional. And secondly, you need to change the title, because the title doesn't reflect your story. I'm like, okay. So finding the editor was easy. He referred me to someone he knows. And then I'm like, my title. What is it going to be? What is it going to be? And then I'm like, okay, what is this book about? I'm like, oh, this book is about coming back to me. Back to me. So what's the subtitle? Changing how I feel about my mother, my body, and men.
So why is that the subtitle?
Because it's what the book is about. It's about my journey and my transformation, on how I viewed myself, my mother. Because of my relationship with my mother and myself, I only knew toxicity. So I was drawn to toxic men and ended up having toxic relationships.
Got it.
And my body, because I grew up hating myself, and my mom encouraging me to lose weight, she would say, no, nobody's ever going to love you unless you're thin. So I would eat and eat it. And so I became addicted to food. I'm like, I don't want anybody anyway. I'm unloved. I'm not worthy of love, right? So I'm just going to eat. And I ate compulsively. So for 10 years of my life, I was super heavy. Until one day, this handsome guy fell in love with me. And I was, I think, 220 pounds, something like that. And when I went back to Brazil, and he went there too, he was South African. My mom said, Camilla, Emil is so handsome. Why don't you lose some weight for him? I'm like, and that just triggered something in me, Tammy. I'm like, that's right. You know, if a guy this handsome can fall in love with me the way I am, what I was told my entire life is a lie. I am worthy of love. I am fantastic. I'm fabulous.
Right.
So I fell in love with myself, and I stopped having to eat to comfort myself, to fill that void of love. So for 3.5 years, I just re-educated myself, started looking at myself differently, made choices daily, and I lost 90 pounds without medication, without surgery, without anything. Just self-love.
Self-love.
That's hence my body, my mother, my body, and men.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so in 2016, I changed my name from Camilla to Michelle in the book.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like,
Why?
I shouldn't have changed. I don't know.
Not worthy.
Exactly.
Imposter syndrome. You talk about that.
Exactly. Imposter syndrome. That's exactly what I was feeling. And so when I did all this work with Bellany, that's my coach's name, all this work with Bellany, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to put my name in that book because it's my story. I'm owning this.
Wow.
So I did. And I'm like, you know what? I'm recording a bio series. So I launched a bio series about the book.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's being released. Episodes 1, 2, 3, and 4 are on air. 5 is going to be released next week. You know, and people are like, but where are you going with this? Where are you going with this? What's happening? I said, I have no idea. I'm just doing it.
That's the best part.
I'm just doing it because I feel like it. I feel like doing this.
Hello. Hi.
Yeah.
I can relate.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter where it goes.
It doesn't matter where it goes. What matters is, I know this is something I have to do.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do.
Yeah. You're choosing to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm choosing to shine my light, Tammy.
I know. And it's such a
Yes.
beautiful light. I love it. Never, ever, ever stop shining your light. So
We shall never.
what's that?
We shall never.
We shall never. So, what is the best way for people to engage with this? Where do they find your book? Where can they watch this series that you're building? How can they find more? Because I know people are going to be interested now.
Thank you. So my book is available on Amazon for now until I get discovered.
Yes. Yay.
So they can go on Amazon, look for Camilla Dorand, Back to Me, Changing How I Feel About My Mother, My Body, and Men. The bio series is now on a platform called c2tv.org. It's my director's platform that he's launching. And my podcast, I was just, before getting on air with you, I was just writing my first episode, finishing my first episode so I can start recording. And on, social media, I've been recording videos and putting up posts about little things here and there. So social media, this platform, and Amazon, that's how. Oh, and I have a website now, CamillaDorand.com. I just launched it.
Well, there you go. So they can probably find your socials on there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love it. I know people will be very interested. I'll put all of that information in the notes too, so people can find it easily.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. Like I said, I just cherish you. You are such a light, and I'm gravitated to you. So I'm grateful that we're friends. I'm grateful that you're doing what you're doing. Keep it up, girl.
Thank you, Tammy. You have been an inspiration, because when you decided to leave the publishing business to be what you are now, to really be Tammy Tuesday, a life of life, love, and purpose, right?
Yep.
It was like, will I ever get there? That's what I thought. I'm like, that is so courageous. And she's so crazy. And look at me doing the same.
I know. Well, it is funny when you step into something that's bigger than you. You're like, oh, I must be nuts. But well, here I go. It's happening.
Here I go.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited to what's to come. I have no idea what's to come. However, I'm still so excited for what's to come.
Yeah. Well, that's the best part, is just stepping into it and let it roll.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm very grateful for you for giving me this space and allowing me to share with your followers a little bit of my story.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for being so candid and open and sharing that, because I know it will resonate with a lot of people. We all feel the way you've described today at some point. So I know it will bring value to a lot of people. So thank you for sharing it.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today and listening to Camilla's beautiful story of inspiration and self-love, which we all need so badly. You can find more information on my website, TammyTuesday.com, as well as social media at Tammy Tuesday Life, both on Instagram and Facebook. And anything, we always appreciate it when you like, follow, subscribe. If you can hit the subscribe button if you're watching, because we are available on YouTube with the podcast as well. We appreciate it. It makes it so people can find it more easily who do need the message. And if you know of somebody that could use this message, please forward it to them. We appreciate that. And always leaving you with lots of love and light. Remember, life, love, and purpose, it all begins with you. Peace out.